Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Tough one for the Preds last night.
Yeah.
It was a big game, and they lost, and they played well, and they tried, and it was close, but they lost. So just throw that one out there. They got another one tonight here on the program. TD Power Hour will be a little different today, 3:30 for TD, because, again, it's an early start on the road at Florida. So TD from 3:30 to 4:30. Hal will be on the program today, etc. So I do have this long topic that I wanted to start today's show on, but Ian, I've got to address the midday show.
Oh, boy. What happened now?
Well, you know the nickname that we give the midday show?
What's that?
The Rand Club with Derek and Willie. Adam moderates it. You know, Adam to me is not as much of a sunshine pumping Rand Carthon supporter like the other two are. The other two, I mean, Rand Carthon can do no wrong with the other two. I mean, Derek was yelling and screaming at me last week on the pregame show about how the ball not bouncing their way was a figure of speech. And I took my phone and I said, read the comments. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. I'm sorry. But as I was getting ready to come on the show today, this is funny. It reminds me of something Bob Valvano, who I used to work with in Louisville, you know, Jim Valvano's brother. Bobby V is a very good radio host, by the way. One day, I forget what we were talking about. It had to do with something with Charlie Strong. And Bob Valvano sat down after we got off the air. And the thing about Bob was Bob could sit down, Bob can sit down and just start talking. Like, I mean, I spend hours thinking about what kind of takes we're going to have and we're going to talk about things like that on a daily basis. And Bobby V could just sit down and boom, he would go. And so he said to me in the hallway one day before a show, he goes, well, what are you doing talking about this? Charlie Strong, I think, was the topic we were talking about. And I told him what the take was. And as I'm walking out of the studio, Bobby V starting his show, sitting there, just because he saw it in the text line, sitting there and basically tearing down everything that we just said. Which takes me to the Rand Club, our midday show. Ian, as I was getting ready to come into the studio on the air, I heard Derek Mason at the end of the program talking about Jermaine Illuminor.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody that listens to this show knows who Jermaine Illuminor is. He is the right tackle of the New York Giants. I do not love him. He is the right tackle of the New York Giants. He was the right tackle last year for the Las Vegas Raiders. He is on a 2-year, $14 million contract, $6.5 million guaranteed, and I know that off the top of my head. And Derek was saying the guy Jared wanted so bad, Jermaine Illuminor, he sucks too. That was essentially what Derek said. So Jared thinks he has the answer at right tackle, and the guy he likes sucks. First of all, I don't love Jermaine Illuminor. I do not love Jermaine Illuminor. But last year, there were almost no right tackles on the free agent market. He was the one. And so I said, you got to go get him because they don't have a right tackle. So you have to go get the one guy that's out there. And the Giants, and again, the Giants are not the gold standard for a well-run organization. If you watch them on Hard Knocks, there's no way you could have watched the Giants offseason Hard Knocks and not come away from that thinking that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are dopes. But again, the Giants drafted Evan Neal 7th overall 2 years ago. He was their right tackle. He stunk. They signed Illuminor. You drafted Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
PT. You drafted PT 2 years ago in the 3rd round. He stinks. Your guy said, PT can do it. And I said, oh, no. And so I have been slapping the Titans on the ass all year for not having signed Jermaine Illuminor. Because what always happens, Kaharski, whenever somebody says, well, I mean, how could they ignore right tackle? They'll immediately say to you, well, who would you have gotten that was any better? And this year I came prepared because we spent so much time with the free agent boards. I knew that Calvin Ridley had a problem catching the ball last year because we talked about it at the free agent boards. I knew that Tyler Boyd doesn't run down the field. Chris Sanders came on the show and he was talking about Tyler Boyd goes deep. I said, Tyler Boyd does not go deep. I'm looking at it right here on the board. What are we talking about? Unbelievable. But again, we get back to Illuminor. So Derek gets on at the very, very end of the show. And I don't even know where this came from. Probably came from the fact that I saw on Twitter, Ian, that 1025 The Game put out a tweet saying there are so many 2-6 teams. There are 9 2-win teams.
Yeah, there
are 9 2-win teams, including the Titans. Why is that the case? And I just quote tweeted. Illuminor's no good.
Well, the Giants have a right tackle. They also only have 2 wins.
Guys, yeah, but the Giants, I mean, they had Daniel Jones.
Just saying.
Guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. Jermaine Illuminor's allowed 2 sacks this year. 2 sacks. Nicholas T. Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT,
has allowed 5, according to Pro Football Focus. Leroy Watson has allowed 2 sacks. That's 7 sacks at right tackle. Illuminor's allowed 2. You see the point I'm making? And again, this goes back to what I have said forever, which is, again, you have to have a right tackle. You don't even have to have a good right tackle because Illuminor's not a good right tackle. Getting a good right tackle would have been Mike McGlinchey, who is now with the Denver Broncos, who wanted to be a Tennessee Titan 2 off seasons ago. That's a good right tackle. Illuminor is a below average starting right tackle, but he's a starting right tackle, which you don't have. So if you want to come to me and say, well, hey, Jermaine Illuminor sucks anyway, so your guy stinks too. First of all, he's not my guy. He was the only guy. He was the guy you had to get. The other guy is Morgan Moses, who the Jets traded for in a 4th-round pick swap with the Ravens. And I always liked Morgan Moses, but again, he wasn't a free agent, so we wanted him 3 years ago when he was a free agent, but we didn't do the work on him like we did Illuminor. Like, we knew what was out there in the free agent world. We didn't know what was out there in the trade world. But again, those guys are actual right tackles. The guys you're putting out there are all terrible. Derek just comes on and says, I mean, Jermaine Illuminor stinks too, Jared, except for the fact that he's only allowed 2 sacks this season. 2. And he's played 9 games. He is the starting right tackle. Your guys have allowed 7 sacks. That is horrendous. So don't be coming on here, Derek. I love you, but don't be coming on here saying like, oh yeah, Jared's guy stinks when you're not backing it up. You're just saying, oh yeah, he's a D player and those guys are F players. Again, a D is a passing grade. And I don't even know where we got the D from, but the difference between a D and an F, a D is a passing grade. Again, not to tell the right tackle story, but in 2015, when Floyd said they don't have a right tackle, I don't think he meant they don't have a good right tackle. He meant they just don't have a right tackle, period. And then it takes me to McGlinchey, because you could have had Mike McGlinchey. Mike McGlinchey was in San Francisco. Mike McGlinchey felt comfortable with Rand Carthon as the general manager. And Mike McGlinchey wanted to be a Tennessee Titan when he was the top right tackle, and I feel pretty good about this, when he was the top right tackle on the market before the 2023 season. Mike McGlinchey makes like $17 million a year, something like that. And he was the top right tackle on the market, and he wanted to be here. And he would have taken less to be here, and again, I feel pretty certain about that. And at the time, I said, you got to go get Mike McGlinchey. And then I started to hear the McGlinchey camp wanted to be here, but the Titans had no interest in Mike McGlinchey to play right tackle. Instead, they signed Andre Dillard to play left tackle. And the excuse at the time was, and this is why the cap is fake, John Robinson messed up the cap. Well, now you guys know that the cap's fake. And again, Joe can say, well, I mean, it's malleable and you can move it however you want. No teams make decisions based off the cap, but the cap's real. But I think now everybody knows. I think we've scratched off enough for people to realize the salary cap is in no way A, real, or B, an impediment to keeping you to get somebody. If you don't have the cap space in order to be able to get somebody, you just redo a contract, add void year. It doesn't matter, and you know it. It's about the cash. Mike McGlinchey, a real right tackle this year, has allowed 1 sack and 6 pressures. PT allowed more pressures in one game, almost double the amount of pressures in one game that Mike McGlinchey, and he's missed a couple of games with, I think, a knee injury, but he has allowed almost double the amount of pressures that he's got for the season in one game. And they messed up on that one. They could have signed him and they didn't. So I did have a topic I wanted to get to start the show, but I heard this making up crap about the right tackle stuff, and I'm like, no, sir. We are going to have, you cannot just sit there and walk out the door, Derek, and I do love you. You cannot just walk out the door and say, well, that other right tackle stinks too. They do not stink at the same level. 2 sacks for the guy I want to sign this year. 1 sack for the guy they should have signed last year. 5 sacks for the guy that everybody told me could play. Give me a break. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. I did not think that was how we were starting. Ian, you have the grid in front of you. That was not the opening topic today.
That's true. It's not.
But I do have an opening topic that I do want to get to. And it's something that I think I'm having a hard time trying to find myself. We'll do that next and add your phones into it as well. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
you guys see of Elijah Molden, I guess, here in sort of a limited time? And have you seen anything different when you're watching?
No, I see the same guy. I mean, Elijah is he's in position. He's made some plays on the ball. He's a smart football player. He's a good addition to their safety room. You know, he plays his role there and has played it well for him. You know, he's all the same things that we saw here. I mean, he's got ability to be a good starting safety, a good rotational safety. You know, he's got some packages they work in, but he's done a nice job. He's where he's supposed to be. He's made plays. Really a nice probably fit for their defense. Again, very similar scheme to what we run.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday. Let me admit something. I don't watch the Chargers. So I will watch the Chargers for the first time this year on Sunday when they play the Titans. And I believe the Chargers, have they had a national TV game? Is there any reason that I should have watched the Chargers and I have chosen not to so far this year?
Nothing rings a bell. Nothing comes to mind.
I mean, I can't think of. They played the ESPN Plus game on Monday Night Football against the Cardinals at the same time that Derrick Henry was running for about 8,000 yards against the Buccaneers. And I'm sorry, but Ravens Buccaneers or Chargers Cardinals, I'm watching Ravens Buccaneers. And that was the free game. And apparently that was like one of the lowest watched games on a primetime audience in like 15 years in the NFL. And I don't even consider, we talked about this with hockey, because they say, you know, primetime game on national TV on ESPN Plus. I'm like, that's not a national TV audience. Free TV, that is a TV audience. But there is something we got to talk about, because somebody's got to explain this to me. Elijah Molden, when he was a Titan, he was an average-ish player. We played the cut from when the day they traded him, and I said I was conflicted because I felt like he should have been on the 53-man roster. But I certainly didn't think that Elijah Molden is your answer starting at nickel, and I don't think he's your answer starting at safety. But I certainly thought he belonged on the roster. So they traded him for a 7th-round pick in next year's draft. They gave him away. We talk about a bag of footballs. That is like a packet of ketchup that they ended up acquiring in exchange for Elijah Molden. They didn't even get the French fries, just the ketchup, which is what they got. Elijah Molden has 3 interceptions. I believe that would tie Amani Hooker, who got 2 last week. That would tie him for the team lead. Tierre Tart plays on the same team. We remember Tierre Tart. If Tierre Tart had been good, they would have just given him a contract. They wouldn't have released him in the middle of the season last year. They certainly wouldn't have drafted a defensive tackle at 38. Tierre Tart got a game ball for the Chargers because he blocked a field goal. Malik Willis, we know they gave him away for nothing. And he came in here and he lit the Titans up. Malik Willis has played in 2 games as a starter, has won both of them, and came off the bench 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville and won that game for the Green Bay Packers. That's before we even get into the fact that DeAndre Hopkins had 2 touchdowns on Monday Night Football, and Derrick Henry, who's playing on Thursday Night Football, may end up with 2,000 yards again. Molden, Tart, Willis, Henry, and Hopkins. Again, I don't watch the Chargers, so I'll have to take your word for this. Somebody told me that Christian Fulton's been playing the best football of his career for the Chargers. I can't back that up because I haven't seen it, so I'll have to take your word for it. But what do all these guys have in common? What do every single one of those guys have in common? Elijah Molden is small. Derrick Henry is big. Tierre Tart is fat. Malik Willis is skinny. DeAndre Hopkins is old. Christian Fulton, not as old. There's only one thing those guys have in common. They all played on the Titans. And ever since they've left the Titans, they've become better players. I mean, I never thought Elijah Molden would be a starting safety with 3 interceptions. Not the guy I saw taking, trying to get a spot on the Titans last year, or this year, I guess, in camp and everything. I didn't see that. So somebody Somebody tell me what's going on. Well, I mean, Joe Rexroad said yesterday, Derrick Henry was always good. We all knew it. Do we think Derrick Henry had 2,000 yards in him? Really? And this is a question the Titans have to ask themselves. Because every time I bring something like this up, somebody tells me that the other team that player went to is better at whatever it is that's supposed to make that guy good. And because of that, we should just accept why these guys stunk with the Titans. In fact, somebody on the YouTube chat, the distinguished gentleman whom I love with all my heart, but is the biggest sunshine pumping Bobo there is out there, God bless you, said, it's the Jim Harbaugh defense, Jared. Just like Malik Willis's success with the Green Bay Packers is because they have Matt LaFleur. Just be like Derrick Henry's success with the Ravens is because they've got a great offensive line with a right tackle they drafted at 62 overall. When you were taking a run-stuffing DT, they were taking a right tackle who's helping Derrick Henry run for 2,000 yards again. So I'm not allowed to want the Ravens offensive line, which, by the way, doesn't even rank, I believe, in the top 10 at Pro Football Focus. I'm not allowed to want the Ravens offensive line. I'm not allowed to think that Malik playing better somewhere else is a reflection of what's wrong with you because, well, they have Matt LaFleur, Jared. It's LaFleur's scheme. Isn't that what Brian Callahan's supposed to be doing? Like, isn't Brian Callahan supposed to be the offensive guru, tight pants, latte, big play sheet? Isn't he supposed to be doing that? Jim Harbaugh's defense? They were in college last year. I thought Denard Wilson was the greatest defensive coordinator that ever lived. That's what everybody told me when they hired him. So how come the Titans? The one I will give you is the D-Hop thing. Because, I mean, he went from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph to Mahomes. So that I will give you. And I would love to have a Mahomes, but I can't set the expectation at, you should have a Mahomes. But in every instance, all these players go somewhere else. They play infinitely better. This is the one reason why I think there might be hope for Will Levis's career, is because maybe Will Levis doesn't suck that bad, but it's just the Titans. And the why this is happening. And we'll see on Sunday, because, again, I don't watch the Chargers. So when it comes to Molden and Tart and Fulton, and we'll see if they're actually good or not. But, again, the point I guess I'm trying to make here is when everybody leaves your team and infinitely plays better, there's a problem. If everybody left your school and went somewhere else and started making great grades, but they couldn't pass at your school, you'd have a problem. You'd have to investigate why that is. But around here, instead of actually looking at it objectively and saying, hold on, what's happened with Malik Willis over it? Somebody tell me. Instead of that, Brian Callahan got up at the podium after they lost to the Packers, and he said, we knew Malik was a capable quarterback when he was here. Then why'd you trade him away for a 7th-round pick? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Malik had 2 years left on his contract and was making almost half of what Mason Rudolph was making. If you knew Malik was a capable quarterback, you would have kept Malik, and Malik would be the backup next year. And Brian Callahan's at the podium yesterday. Oh, yeah, we knew Elijah Molden was a starting safety in the league. Then why'd you sign Jamal Adams, and why'd you trade him away for a packet of ketchup? No. This stuff doesn't add up. But if you just take our offensive line's not as good as the Ravens, so it's okay that Derrick Henry's still the king, then you'll make excuses for anything. You'll just accept reality. And then you'll be mad on Sunday, and we'll talk about it on Monday, and you'll be angry on Monday, and by Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I'm a hater again. Because I see it happen every week. But for Brian Callahan to sit there and say, oh, yeah, no, we knew Molden was this kind of player. Excuse me? Then why did you trade him away for a 7th next year? And some people will say, because I heard Robbie and Joe say this morning, they will say, well, Elijah Molden was unhappy when they signed Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, and he wanted to play, and so he Okay. A.J. Brown demanded a trade too. Does anybody say, well, A.J. demanded a trade, so it was okay to trade him? No. They work for you, not the other way around. You don't work for them. I'm glad we traded away DeAndre Hopkins for peanuts. I'm glad because the most important thing here is that D-Hop have a chance to win. What do I care about that? I don't care about DeAndre, and I don't care about the Chiefs. I care about the Titans. And yet everything is just, oh, no, it isn't. Okay. And by the way, this isn't just a Brian Callahan thing. Because some of these guys, Fulton and Tart and Henry, they played under Mike Vrabel. So it's not just a Callahan thing, but it is a problem that I think the Titans have to get to the bottom of. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. Plus, did you see what Travis Kelce said about DeAndre Hopkins? We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company on 1025 The Game.
he's so good at winning one-on-one. And so to be able to have him down in the red zone, third down situations, he does a good job of filling out and finding those windows. He's kind of like Travis does. I think as he figures out the whole entire offense, he'll get even better, because there's sometimes he's going places I'm like, man, there's a time and a place for that, but that's what makes him great. And then you give him a chance down the field and he makes a play. It goes from a play where it might have been a bad decision to a big-time catch.
That was Patrick Mahomes talking about the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. And did you guys see what Travis Kelce said about DeAndre Hopkins? Quote, "It's the smoothest transition I've ever seen. It's been so effing cool to have him. It's given everybody kind of a juice and a morale. I call them swag champs. We don't win that game," talking about Monday Night Football. "We don't win that game without him." And the more I see DeAndre Hopkins play on the Chiefs, and the more I hear stuff like that from Kelce and from Mahomes, the more I think back to what Ian put into my brain 2 days ago. And Ian, I know you probably regret doing this, but when Mike Williams went for a 5th-round pick, Ian said, I think it was during a break, right, Ian?
I think so.
During a break, Ian's like, if Mike Williams is going for a 5th, why are you getting a 5th for DeAndre? And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. That's true. You got a 5th because he's not going to play 60% of the snaps. You got a 5th, knowing it would be a bottom of the 5th round pick from the Chiefs for DeAndre Hopkins, had to eat the contract money. Now, it's not my money, so I don't care, but don't come bitching to me about, well, we can't sign a guard this year because we don't have any money. And here you are eating the money for DeAndre Hopkins so you can get a 5th. A bottom of the 5th. So 2 weeks before the deadline, you trade DeAndre Hopkins for the same thing that Mike Williams goes for, a round lower than Jonathan Mingo went for, and you ate the contract, and Kansas City is all in on Hopkins. So here's what this looks like to me. It looks like DeAndre probably went to the Titans and said, guys, I'll do whatever you want. If you want me to be here, I'll be here, but I'd like to be somewhere good. Now, at the same time, he was telling TD that Will Levis was a good quarterback because he knows football and we don't. Talking about Hopkins. The Titans probably called around, and some teams probably weren't interested. Will, look around. And KC was probably telling the Titans, I mean, we'd have some interest. All the while, Andy and Brent Veach and Mahomes were in the back corner saying, oh my God, I think we might be able to do this. And then imagine what we would be like if we had DeAndre Hopkins. And then Mahomes was probably like, oh my God, imagine if Andy was like, oh, we can get D-Hop. Oh my God. And so then Brent Veach, again, that's what they're saying in the corner when they're huddled up and they're not talking that. And then they come back to the time and say, we really don't have the money to be able to do this. And we can give you a 6th and maybe we can condition it up. And the Titans said, well, that's probably not good enough. And they said, okay, fine. Here's our walk-away price. We'll do a 5th that can become a 4th if he plays 60% of the snaps and we go to the Super Bowl. But that's our final offer. And the Titans probably went back to their corner, all the while Kansas City sitting there saying, think they'll take it? I mean, I think they might. Oh, my God, we can get DeAndre Hopkins. And the Titans corner, they're like, well, if we don't make this trade, they said this was their walk-away price. If we don't make this trade, then we'll lose DeAndre for nothing. And if we do make the trade, we'll get a 5th rounder, and then we can go tell the Tennessean that we're going to flip our roster with 5th round and 7th round picks. Okay, let's do it. And they made the trade. But when I see how Kansas City is using Hopkins, and I see how important Hopkins is to that team after 2 weeks, and I see how Mahomes is like, yeah, I can just throw the ball to him like it's Kelce. He'll go figure out how to get open. We'll put the ball there. We'll put it down the field. And Andy is trusting him in big moments in his second game, and they got nobody else a receiver. My guess is that wasn't Kansas City's walk-away price. My guess is Kansas City cooked you, if I had to guess. They came up to you and they haggled and they won. And now they've got a number one receiver. And you can't say that you didn't get fleeced on DeAndre Hopkins when you guys spent all that time last year saying, Rand fleeced Howie Roseman on Bayard. Because, again, a 5th and a 6th round pick, it's a bag of footballs. But what DeAndre Hopkins is giving the Chiefs is a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. You don't mean to tell me that the Titans couldn't have said, no, we're not giving you your number one receiver unless you give us your third. You got our third for Snead, which is going to be higher than your third, but you got to give us your third for Hopkins. You mean to tell me with Mahomes in his prime, with Andy, with and Kelsey doesn't have that much longer left. You mean to tell me they wouldn't have done that, knowing where they are with the Super Bowl team?
Robbie and Joe asked Charles Robinson about this morning.
I heard that, and Charles said that the Steelers didn't want DeAndre.
Something about
basically what he said.
Pretty much that the market, there was not a large market for Hopkins, and they wouldn't have been able to like leverage someone else's interest to get more.
Here's what, again, that might be true. With Charles, we got to take his marketing with a grain of salt after the 2 first-round picks for Vrabel didn't materialize. But what I will say, that may be true. There may not have been another team around the league that said, oh, we have to get DeAndre Hopkins. But that's not the leverage. The leverage was the time. The leverage was, well, we're going to have more than that. We're going to have more than a 5th. And there's 2 weeks before the deadline. That's the leverage. The leverage is not somebody else might trade for him. The leverage is you might not have DeAndre Hopkins. And again, it would be one thing if Kansas City was like, yeah, we'll take a flyer, and they slowly worked him in, and they said, well, it's going to take some time, probably the way you're slowly working in Jerome Baker. That would have been one thing. Instead, it was, yeah, we'll do this for a conditional 5th that could be a 4th with these wild conditions. And then it's like, he's our number one receiver, and we're throwing him the ball 35 times a game.
Yeah, what other options did KC have other than Hopkins? Mike Williams?
So,
that's not going to be much.
Exactly. Jonathan Mingo?
You don't want that. Nobody wanted Mingo.
Except the one guy who, I want him.
Except for one.
I want him.
I guess it only takes one.
The more I hear them talking Kansas City about Hopkins, the more I see how they use Hopkins, the more I'm like, and you had to eat the money too? Like, really? Oh my God.
It needs to hit those conditions to move
also,
into a 4th.
Who has more money? Again, not to pocket watch here. And I know the Hunt family, they are cheap. But who do you think's making more football revenue right now? The Chiefs or you? And you had to eat the money? I mean, Skylar says, imagine what the Chiefs think of Rand Carthon. They fleeced him with both Snead and DeAndre Hopkins. Again, the deal right now is DeAndre Hopkins, their number one receiver, and your third, which is going to be at the top of the 3rd round this year, in exchange for your injured corner and a 5th and whatever you had to eat on the DeAndre contract. Whew. Man, that's bad. I mean, that is bad. Adam in Portland's all mad. Adam in Portland says, everything you're saying about the Titans applies to the Predators right now. Or you want to fire Barry Trotz? Because if not, it's hypocritical. Duchesne is crushing it, and we pay him to not be here. We were a winner and paid for stars, and the stars suck now. Are you firing Barry Trotz? Didn't think so. Let me say this. Steven Stamkos scored last night, which is a lot more than some of the things the Titans guys that they went out and paid this offseason are doing. But I'm not happy with the Predators at all. Like, people think that, hey, you just give the Predators a pass. Give the Predators a pass? Are you serious? And the general manager on the show, we talked about firing the coach with him 2 weeks ago. The general manager on the show, we asked, I said, okay, when's the button you got to push? I told the general manager I wouldn't have given him the contract he gave the goalie. If you think I've changed, like, we want to win. David Boyle, I used to get after his ass because I thought everything he said was bullcrap at the end. And with John Hines, I think that was kind of proven to be true. But when Barry comes on the show on Tuesdays, you hear him say the puck didn't bounce their way. They hit 4 crossbars last night. If Barry came on the show today, I highly doubt he'd be talking about hitting the crossbar.
And a controversial goal taken off, apparently. But
yeah, I couldn't, like, I heard Max say on Chase and Big Joe that the ref said they didn't blow the whistle. If they didn't blow the whistle, that's a goal. I just assumed that they blew the whistle. And that's why they said no goal. And that's why Burnett didn't challenge it. But that's a different discussion. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. A lot of people do want to weigh in. So we will get to your phones at 615-737-1025. Plus, there is another little nugget that's out there that there's a lot of speculation that we'll get to next. It's a speculation around arguably one of the single most popular people in that Titans building. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace at Twin Peaks in Cool Springs this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30. We'll break down the Titans and the Chargers. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. And also, speaking of Twin Peaks, tune in to 94.9 The Fan this Saturday at 6:30 for our college football game of the week, Alabama and LSU. Presented by Twin Peaks Restaurants. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. So there was a little nugget that came out today. The voice of the Tennessee Volunteers, Bob Kessling, who took over for the legendary John Ward, has announced that at the end of this basketball season, he's retiring. So Bob Kessling, and I like Bob Kessling. I like listening to him call the games. He is retiring from the Vol Network. And immediately, the Knoxville News Sentinel ran a story, and VolQuest ran a story, and saying the top choice for the job should be Mike Keith. Ian? I guarantee that Mike Keith will not leave the Titans to be the next voice of the Tennessee Volunteers. Put it on the list. Because I keep seeing, the Knoxville News Sentinel, who should replace Bob Kessling as the voice of the Vols? And there's a picture of Mike Keith. And then there was a Vol question, who should replace? And there's a picture of Mike Keith. And it's easy. Mike Keith went to Tennessee. Mike Keith loves Tennessee. Mike Keith, I think some people said that Mike Keith was his dream job was to be the voice of the Vols when John Ward was doing it. And that's great. But Mike Keith is not leaving an NFL job that he's had for 27 years to go do college. He's not, it's not going to happen. And I haven't talked to Mike about this, and I have no sourcing on this. And I'm sure somebody will say to Mike, Jared Stillman was talking about how you're not going to leave to go. And I'm sure he'll sit there and think to himself, what are they talking about me for? And that's fine. But Mike Keith is the voice of the Titans. He's the only voice of the Titans. And I think there's a lot of pride as far as he's concerned with being the only voice of the Titans. Again, every single call they've ever had, Mike Keith has made it. And the most famous call, the Music City Miracle, is his call. Mike Keith knows that if he were to go to Tennessee to call UT football and UT basketball games and to host Vol calls and to all those things, if he were to do that, he would never really be the voice of Vol Nation because that's John Ward. And he knows that. And he knows that he'll never have the 50-year run that Bob Kessling has had. So why would he do that? Now, I could see Tennessee saying, okay, we want John Wilkerson to call basketball, but we want Mike Keith to call football. And then maybe Mike calls football on Saturday with the Vols and then calls. But I think that's too difficult because let's use this game. How does Mike Keith get from, wherever to L.A. for a kickoff on Sunday? The Titans aren't chartering a flight for Mike Keith to fly private to be able to call the game. So I'm sure if the Vols called, he would be so flattered and everything, but he's not leaving an NFL job. And I compared this on Twitter. I'm like, this is like a coach. A coach is not leaving an NFL head coaching job to go to college. Jim Harbaugh didn't leave the 49ers to go to Michigan. He got fired. Mike Keith is not leaving the Titans. Now, if they make the John Wilkerson guy, that would make more sense. But this is Mike Keith thing. He is going, I guarantee he will do about 20 more years calling Titan games. And boy, Mike does not look like he's aged a day, but he'll do 20 more years calling Titan games and then he'll hang it up. 25 more years, 30 more years, something like that. And I don't think it's a job, that he can do. He doesn't just call the game. He hosts the TV shows. He hosts the coaches show. He hosts the podcast. He can't do that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. One texter into the text line says, these players that are leaving the Titans in the middle of the season usually get traded away when they're not doing well, perhaps as a general rule. So maybe it's because these players do not want to play for the Titans that they are lowering their performance in order to be able to get traded. That's a problem. Again, this is all about knowing what your talent is. If Elijah Molden's actually good, and you gave him away for a 7th-round pick next year, and the Chargers thought he was good and he's good for the Chargers, that's a problem for you. If Malik Willis is actually good and Green Bay saw something that you didn't, that's a problem. If DeAndre is just, lollygagging and sulking because he wants to be somewhere else, well, that's something you've got to get addressed with DeAndre. Not, oh, okay, we'll trade you for a bag of footballs to go watch him dominate on Monday Night Football. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, the Preds. They lost a game in which, if you want to be positive about it, you can be positive about it. But you guys know me. I got to be realistic. We'll do it next. This week's Nashville's Best Deals from Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit is a great spot to enjoy some of Nashville's vibes with craft cocktails, delicious food, and live music just steps from iconic venues. It's perfect for a night out. Snagging a $50 gift card now for only $25 is a fantastic way to experience it, and you can get yours now at theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. TD in less than 30 minutes for the TD Power Hour. The Predators last night lost on the road at Washington 3-2. It was a very well-played hockey game by both sides. Alexander Ovechkin, who's on a heater, had the game winner in the third period last night. There was a goal that got taken off the board for the Predators. It was a real kick in the groin for the Predators last night that they did not get 1 point. And I heard Andrew Burnett say after the game he thought he really liked the way they played. And I heard Robbie Stanley say this morning that he thought it was one of the most complete games they played this season. And that's great, but they needed to win. I don't disagree with the fact that last night they played some real hockey. They played a tough team, tough. And this is the second time they've really done that because they went to Tampa last week on Monday night on the road. And after not showing up for the first period, they played their butts off and ended up losing in overtime, and they picked up a point. But again, they didn't win. I say this all the time when it comes to hockey, and I brought this up. This was my lead topic yesterday, which was I do not say games are big games if I don't think that the outcome truly matters to the season. You know, again, when they're selling tickets, it's a big game this Tuesday night against Calgary. Is it? Is it really a big game? But I said last night it was a big game against Washington. It was the kickoff to the road trip. Barry Trotz has already played his card of threatening to shake up the locker room if they don't go out there and play better. And yet, they lost. And we can, all we want, we can excuse it and we can talk about, well, hey, the Parsonen line, last night they got thrown together at the last moment because Tommy Novak got scratched. And so Luke Evangelista was supposed to be a healthy scratch. He gets put in the lineup. They score a goal. They were very active last night, very good at getting to the crease, very good at getting in front of the net. We can say, hey, Steven Stamkos scored 5-on-5, which his 5-on-5 play has been a little bit of a question mark. Saros was good in net. We can make the excuse that the puck didn't bounce their way when they had the goal taken off the board last night. And I heard Max on Chasing Big Joe. He said that the referees said that they did not blow the whistle. If they did not blow the whistle, then I do not know why Andrew Burnett did not challenge. That's all great, though. But they still lost. And they've played so poorly to start the season that they needed to win last night. And they didn't. Peter Laviolette used to say after games like that all the time, he'd say, love the way we played, hate the result. He must have said that 1,000 times. When he thought they went out there and played a good game and they still lost, he'd say, I love the way we played, I hated the result. And with Peter, the one thing you'll say about it, you knew if he wasn't happy, he'd let you know. And that's what last night's game was. But they've dug themselves such a hole to begin the season that at some point you have to win. That moral victory last night, that doesn't do you any good. You didn't get any points from last night's performance. And if this were a regular November where they didn't start off 0-5 and they weren't 8-7-1 entering last night, then I would be encouraged by what I saw. But at the end of the day, they're 4-8-1. I like the way they played last year in the playoffs in Game 6 against Vancouver at home. But because it was an elimination game, the only thing that mattered was the result itself. And the result was you lost. Doesn't do you any good that you went toe-to-toe with Vancouver. It was a close game. They scored late. All of a sudden, nobody remembers that. Nobody cares. Again, in a typical November, a typical hockey season, a Tuesday night game in November, or I should say Wednesday night game. A Wednesday night game in November against the Washington Capitals barely even crosses my radar screen. Tonight against Florida, they're going to have to win because they need the points. And they're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions. And again, if you lose this now, it's 5-10-1. Or excuse me, 5-9-1. Or 4-9-1. Sorry. But in a typical season, when there's 82 games, I probably wouldn't even watch tonight's game. We got the Ravens playing the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. You know, this is one where I kind of on the phone have it or I catch up. But this is a big one tonight. And again, it's because the hole you've dug yourself is so deep. And everybody's telling me after yesterday, hey, they played well. They played hard. They were competitive. It was a good game. Ovechkin scored at these Ovechkin. He's going for the record and he's on a heater. And that's great. But you screwed around early in the season with too many of these games against the Seattle Kraken at home that you just blew, that now you have to win these games. And the moral victory, that doesn't do it for me right now. You got to dig yourself out of the hole. Because if we want to play this game and we want to say, well, you know, they played well enough to win, but they didn't yesterday. Well, they played well enough to lose against Chicago and Columbus, and they still won those games. They got a problem. They got to start winning. And I do understand the difference between playing winning hockey and just winning at the end of the day. For instance, I'll use the Titans game on Sunday. That wasn't winning football. They won by a field goal at home in overtime against the worst team. They turned the ball over inside the 5-yard line. They can't get lined up on a kickoff. They can't stop a punt returner. They can't do anything. They won the game, but that's not winning football. Some point, all that matters is the result. I would have rather the Predators gone out there yesterday, played like ass, but still have found a way to win the game. Whether it was a goalie steal or the other team stunk just as much as you or whatever, than sitting here and saying, well, they played well. I mean, you don't have time to play well. You started off 0-5. You don't have time to play well. You have to win. Again, we talked about it with Vingan yesterday, or I talked about it with Vingan yesterday off the air. And I said, I'm going to, these road trips, this little mini road trip, they come back Saturday and then they go on the road for 2 weeks. And out of the 10 games or whatever it was, Ian, was it 9 games? Vingan said they had to get like 10 or 11 points out of 18 points. Well, last night they got 0.
Yeah, not off to the best start.
If they had gotten a point and lost in overtime, then we could have a more layered discussion about how they played, because they did play well. Delgado, I don't know what the hell he was doing out there last night. And Brady Shea keeps turning the puck over, and Saros is making him, cleaning up his messes. But they looked effective on the power play. Again, their penalty kill is very good. But they got to win. Like, they have to win, period. And so to play the way they played yesterday, I'm not saying they did not play a good game. But to sit there and act like what happened last night was okay, or that they're going to be okay when they didn't get any points, it's hard for me to do that. It's hard for me to feel like they took a step in the right direction when I'm looking right now at where they sit in the standings. They have the least amount of points in the NHL. There are 2 other teams that have 9 points. I think it's the Flyers and, Ian, is it Montreal who has 9 points as well?
I think that's right. They've been off to a slow start. Yeah. Chicago's the other team in the West that's with the Preds.
I mean, you guys are winning, guys. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Montreal has
Not
10
well,
now.
we played well, and we didn't. You can do that in a regular season, but this isn't a regular season. This is a season that you started off 0-5. Vingan tells me it was 11 of 16. Well, you got 0 last night, which means now you need 11 of 14. I mean, good luck. 615-737-1025. We'll hit some of your phones on the Preds if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. The one thing everybody says the Predators have to do, and I think they have to do it too, but it's too early. It's too early. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. Got to tell you about Window Nation. I absolutely love Window Nation. I know they are an honest company and they can redo your windows. And with the weather out there looking as good as it's looking, now's the perfect time to get those windows done. Experts say that heating costs are increasing up to 23% this winter. Oof, that's bad. And if your windows are not from Window Nation, your money is literally going out the window, period. They have some of the best insulated windows so your heat stays inside. And right now, get these amazing windows at 50% off. Again, get the best insulated windows money can buy, and they're good, better, best. They got them all for 50% off. Plus, you could save even more money with 0% interest for 5 years. Did you hear me? 0% interest for 5 years. Hurry because the sale ends November 30th. So schedule your fast in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90NATION or by visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION. windownation.com.
What are the stuff to build on? I mean, you hit a bunch of posts and all that, but what are the kind of common...
The effort. I thought the effort was there. I thought it looked like us. There's only been probably a couple games this year that I can say that, maybe 2. And there's parts of other games that did, but I thought for 60, it looked like kind of how we want to play. Obviously, didn't love some of the breakdowns. In saying that, we stayed with it. The frustration didn't leak in. We stayed positive, and the call doesn't really go your way, and you're able to, I think we learned some lessons and we put them to use today. We just didn't get the reward for it.
The effort. I like the effort. That's great. And that would be good in a normal season. That would be fine in November to say, hey, you put up an effort against a Washington team that's red hot at home, But you start off 0-5. Do you need the points? A lot of people keep telling me, Jared, the Predators need to trade for a second-line center. And I agree. I think they've kind of Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT.
You weren't ready for a PT this segment, were you?
No, not really, no.
So I think they've PT'd themselves with Tommy Novak. I remember last year with Tommy Novak, he had an incredible goal right in front of me and Vingan against the Colorado Avalanche like 2 days before the trade deadline. And they ended up extending him before that with the $3.5 million a year contract. I remember when Elliott said that teams might trade a first-round pick for Tommy Novak, and I thought, what? Really? But Tommy Novak has kind of been tissue paper ever since. Really, especially in the playoffs. And so I think they kind of PT'd themselves that Tommy Novak could do that with Stamkos and Marchessault, and it hasn't worked out. And the problem with the Predators getting a second-line center is it's too early in the season where the teams that stink don't know that they for sure stink yet. And quite frankly, you stink just as much as anybody else. So I hear everybody saying, we need to trade for a second-line center. And Barry said on the show on Tuesday, he's like, I'm trying to do some things. But who's going to give you a second-line center? The answer is somebody who usually stinks in February and realizes, hey, we're going nowhere. We can get a second-round pick. We can get a first-round pick. Again, last year, Colorado tried Ryan Johansson out as their second-line center. They got to the trade deadline and said, we got to shake it up. And they sent Johansson out of there, traded a first-round pick to get rid of him, bring in Sean Walker. And then they traded Bowen Byram, a defenseman that they used a high first-round pick on in order to acquire Casey Middlestat. Well, Buffalo in November probably wasn't looking to deal Casey Middlestat. You see what I'm saying? And then it's like, do you want to trade Tanner Mollendijk in order to get that second-line center when right now you're down there at the very bottom of the standings? So it's hard for me I hear you, I hear it. I got it. They need a second-line center. But nobody's trading right now. It's too early for that because the teams that stink don't know they stink. I need to make a correction. Brandon from Columbia is going nuts. Apparently, Burnett did challenge the goal last night. I mean, I watched the game, and I guess he challenged it. They said goalie interference.
Yeah.
Bull crap. That was not goalie interference.
That's why they waved it off. That's why they waved it off. Yeah, they said it was goalie interference.
Bull crap. I know. I know goalie interference. And I know that it's very subjective, but sometimes it's like pass interference in the NFL. I see a guy hook somebody and did his hand really get in there? Did the arm really stop and then I know when somebody tackles somebody ahead of time, that wasn't goalie interference. But I apologize for getting that wrong. One texter says the only positive takeaway from last night was the offense played better, but the defense is still crap. Boy, the defense is lost. Hal's going to be on the show next hour. Brady Shea. When Brady Shea was on Carolina and they played that Furcata COVID playoff series, Brady Shea was a legitimate number one pair defenseman, and he was a good defensive defenseman. And Brady Shea, last night he turned the puck over at the blue line and gave Washington a breakaway. And if Saros didn't make a magnificent save, that's ending up in the back of the net. And then the other guys, Shen, he's too slow, and Delgado stinks, and
Lozon and Carrier, it's like they've regressed back to the year before.
I was going to say they look nothing like they looked last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that defense is a problem. One texter says, Elliot Friedman said on DVD that he's been tracking teams that are 5 points out or more of the playoffs in November, 70 teams, and only 10 made the playoffs. I mean, I have to tell you right now, for some reason, I think the Predators are going to make the playoffs. Maybe that's my own bias. Like, maybe that is my own bias. Also, Burnett in that cut we played said that he felt like there wasn't a high level of frustration. Did you guys see at the end of the second period, Roman Josi, Barry came on the show on Tuesday and said he did not like the body language and the frustration. And he talked about a guy slamming his stick or a guy firing a puck down to the other side. And Robbie Stanley texted me, and he said that Josi slammed his stick on the crossbar in the LA game on Monday night.
When they lost.
And that could have been a reference to what Trotz was talking about. Well, at the end of the second period, Josi got called for, I believe it was Josi got called for a penalty. They got called for a penalty as the period was basically over. And Josi fired the puck down the other side. And I was like, that's what Barry Trotz just said he didn't want to see. That is concerning. One texter says the Facebook fan base is okay with last night because the boys played their hearts out. Screw that, the texter says. We need results. I agree. Again, if this were a normal regular season and you were fifth, fourth in the Central and you're just kind of like 2 points away from third and, 1 point away from, fine, whatever. It's early in the year. But when you start off 0-5 and you're down at the very, very, very bottom, I mean, at some point you actually have to win. You can't just, we play. I mean, this is not what Vandy football used to be. Moral victories are not accepted. You got to actually get points. So now you got to go play the defending Cup champions who have had a week off on the back end of a back-to-back. Is Scott Wedgwood's going to be the guy who saves you? So, I mean, I am very, very concerned, and I can't get behind, it was a good effort. I don't care about that. Right now, they need the points. To me, it's simple. It is black and white. They need the points. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. TD is here for the TD Power Hour. That is next. Hey, tune in to 94.9 The Fan this Saturday for Vandy football. The Commodores will be taking on South Carolina with pregame at 1:30 and kickoff at 3:15. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com. And tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville this Saturday for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on Liberty at home. Pregame at 10:30, kickoff at noon. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Stillman and Company, and an earlier edition than normal of the TD Power Hour with the Predators' early start tonight. Teron Davenport, ESPN, is with us. TD, thank you for being accommodating. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good, man. It's good to be here. Appreciate it, and let's rock. Let's do what we do.
Okay, TD, I am going to turn to you as therapist here for a second. I want to start with what's left in the Titans season. We know they're restarting a little bit. We know that they've traded away DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones, and we know that they're probably not going to make the playoffs. We know they're definitely not going to make the playoffs. They're clearly not a Super Bowl contender. They're not even really that young of a team. Yeah, they have a young quarterback, but it feels like that's not even going in the right direction. So for the last 9 games of the year, kind of what is the purpose for the Titans?
Oh, I mean, that's pretty simple. You look at the purpose coming into this year, it remains the same. And the purpose is to get that clean, full evaluation of Will Levis. And I think when you look at this team in a couple of years, we know that the new stadium is going to be opening. Somebody has to be the face of the franchise when that stadium opens, you know, whether that's Will Levis or Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Arch Manning, whoever it may be. And go ahead and Nico, say his last name.
Iamaleava.
There you go.
I
can't leave him out because I know the Vols fans will, chastise me. So we'll make sure we include all the options. But nevertheless, this season is built to make sure that they get a good evaluation on Will Levis. It's a little tough to do that, right, with the injury situation. We'll see. I think he's probably going to be back this week, but I mean that's the goal of this season.
So when it comes to Levis, and I know the Titans publicly have said that they haven't made up their mind, they haven't come close to. I feel like a lot of people around here probably have. Do you think that that's fair or not fair as far as Levis is concerned?
No, it's not fair, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, look, like you made your decision on Peter Skoronski a year into the thing. I mean, you've made your decision on multiple guys. So, I mean, if you as a media person is doing it, it doesn't surprise me that fans are as well. And I don't think it's fair, but I mean, look, like it's what you sign up for, right? This is a production-based business. You don't put the numbers up, you're going to be a target, and people are going to not want you until you do. And it's funny because you flash back to August, they couldn't keep that $8 cologne in stock, right? Because everybody was buying it up. But you know what? Life comes at you fast. And this is just the way things work with this business. And I'll say this, entering week 10, Will Levis is tied for 3rd in interceptions. Now, mind you, he just played a little over 4 games. So there's a lot for him to do. I love the fact that today he said that he's not pressing and saying, hey, I got to do this, that, and the third. He's just going to play football, and that's the way this game is meant to be played. You don't press. You don't get too anxious. You let the big plays come to you. When you have those shots, you take them and you execute, and that is what his plan is to do.
I feel like if I was a lawyer, I could argue either side of the coin on Will Levis.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think that it's been disappointing this year.
Yes.
But at the same time, he had no right tackle. They've traded away his top receiver. Calvin Ridley, while, they have an issue, coordinator, whatever. Calvin Ridley's had his own issues this year catching the football. The Chig, Wiley, Vanette, those guys probably profile more as backups to me than a true starting tight end. And he's got a new system, and I see how Rudolph has looked similarly, the same kind of issues as Levis. And I know that Rudolph looked better last year with the Steelers. I could make the argument that Levis really isn't getting a fair-ish chance. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the argument could be made. But again, this game isn't always fair, right? It's just not. And you have opportunities. You got to take advantage of the opportunities. And that's really what it boils down to. Last year, he got the opportunity. He took advantage, and he said, hey, look, man, I have potential to be this quarterback's franchise or this franchise's quarterback going forward. And that's why they said, hey, look, let's build it around you. We're going to see. And so far he hasn't taken advantage of it. That's really the bottom line. And there's a slew of reasons. You could put the protection in there. You could put the drops in there. You could put the inability to process things and not knowing to go deep or check down, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole lot going on, but that's why you have to, through all this newness, be patient and watch it play out. But it was just people were out on him after the Jets game. It's just like, let the season like run its course.
I do wonder, because the excuses are sometimes valid, sometimes not, but I do wonder, if you were the Titans and you were making millions of dollars, to be able to discern whether or not it's a Levis problem or a Titans problem, how would you feel at this point in time? Would you feel like, yeah, he is not it? Or would you feel like, man, he's getting pressured and right tackle's a problem. And, Calvin Ridley is dropping the football and we don't have a true go-to tight end for a young quarterback. Would you be doing that? Or would you be looking at it saying, right now, so far, what we've seen is not it. We're going to keep going with this, but far, what we've seen.
That's the thing that we get too caught up in trying to say, okay, there's one sole culprit. It's just like with Cole Anderson. Like, I don't think he should be fired. He's not the sole reason. Is he a part of it? Absolutely. Just the same with Will Levis. Like, I don't think he should be given a Trevor Lawrence contract because he's not the guy right now. But does
Trevor
that
Lawrence
mean
probably shouldn't have a Trevor Lawrence contract?
Obviously, but I'm just using like one of the more recent deals.
Sure.
And so that being said, I just don't think that I lost my train of thought when you chimed in on that. I'll put it to you like this. There are always more things, more causes to the final result than what the common person attributes it to. So these issues, I would look at it for how it is. The O-line has to improve. It has improved, right? The receivers you need a consistent receiver. You don't have that, period, right? And so there are things that have to happen.
Accord
has
been consistent.
Yeah, consistent in doses. I will say that. But,
sure.
I mean, let's be honest. He's not someone that you roll out there and say that's your number one right now. Can he be? I think he could be someone you could roll out there and be like, hey, this is who we're going to feature. Now, I mean, how productive that is a different story, but nevertheless, I'm saying, like, you don't have that guy where at the beginning of the week in preparation, they bang their hand on the table and they say, hey, look, man, so-and-so is not going to beat us this week, period. You don't have that.
I got to bring up the Colt Anderson thing you said about how you don't think he should be fired. I'm open to it. Why?
Well, I'll tell you, if you listen to Talking with TD, there's a 9-minute dissertation on the punting situation from Ryan Stonehouse. And look, like, you could just firing him. Is that going to make everybody play better instantly?
Well, I did make it better when they fired Craig Aukerman.
Did it really just instantly get better?
No. I'm saying it didn't. If you go back to that Dolphin game, they blocked a kick, but then Eric Garror dropped the punt that basically should have cost them the game.
And that's what I'm saying. That's a part of this whole, like, there's a thirst to say, hey, look, this is the particular reason, instead of looking at it across the board. And Ryan Stonehouse did an excellent job of explaining that. He talked about, sometimes he does have to rush a kick because if he doesn't rush a kick, it'll get blocked. Other times he gets the punt off and it's a line drive and the gunner save him, or Luke Gifford saves him and makes a play. Other times he has that 5-second hang time that you want and it's placed perfectly, and it doesn't matter because the gunners get down there and they don't make the play. It's a collective thing, right? It's a process. I look at it like tumblers to a lock, right? Like, inside of that lock, when you put that combination right, like, everything has to lay together correctly to be able to unlock it. And I think that's the same way with so many football plays, unless one extravagant thing happens within that play, right? You look at Mason Rudolph's throw that was high and hot to Chigakonkwo. Okay, you know what? He made the wrong read and he threw it high and hot, but Okonkwo has to make the play, right? He makes the play. That play looks good. And we're not saying, hey, Calvin Ridley was wide open in the corner of the end zone. We're just saying, hey, that's a touchdown, right? So there's things that have to happen, and all accordingly. And if something extraordinary doesn't happen, then you have a breakdown.
I think my problem with special teams is outside of Nick Folk kicking, it's kind of there's always something in the totality of it's not just the punting. It's, the kickoff. Jaquan Jackson in overtime, I guess he technically fumbled the ball on the kickoff in overtime. Where they in New England, and I think New England, they took the wrong side of the wind. I don't know how you screw that up, but
that's an interesting one.
But they kicked it on the ground on purpose. Like, they kicked that to make Jaquan Jackson return it because I think they thought, hey, we might be able to pop the ball loose.
Mm-hmm.
And then the returns have been an issue. And then they can't get lined up on the opening kickoff. Like, it's all the different phases of special teams that are all out of whack. And that concerns me as far as looking at the coordinator and saying, hey, this seems to be every phase of it except for the kick.
Here's the thing. That's not something like you can't change the coordinator now and redirect that outcome. Like, you just can't. And that's the problem. Now, if we're talking about this January 14th, 21st, whenever, I would say, you know what? That is probably a decision that you want to make because you want to get somebody in there that's going to get everything realigned and spearhead a big change. Now, to Cole Anderson's credit, his press conference today, like he was pretty good today and pretty descriptive, and pointing out the new gunners and what's asked of them. And, he made a move where they put Nick Westbrook-Ikhine in there. And I mean, the old faithful, he gonna get it done for you. And he mentioned
need to
how
put him on defense.
Right. He mentioned how, but I mean, they got the interception to seal the deal. So that was good. But I mean, look, I just don't think that redoing everything from the coaching position right now, it's not going to benefit you.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of coaching, I do wonder what you think about Brian Callahan, and we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. We'll hit your phones at the end of what I guess that not the hour itself, but the hour that TD is with us. So we will do that. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
The Chargers seem to be building some momentum right now. How huge is Justin Herbert as a part of that with the offense there?
Yeah, he's one of the premier quarterbacks in our league. I mean, he's produced as such. He's paid as such. He's a fantastic player. Really enjoy watching him play the position. Enjoy the talent that he has. And we got to do a good job of making sure we can keep his explosives sort of bottled up. He's really good at getting the ball down the field. He's a good athlete. He's a good runner. He's a really, fantastic quarterback. There's really no other way to put it. So we got to work that out for us there. And he's a huge reason why that team is in the position they're in, is because they're playing good defense and they have him at quarterback.
I have been waiting forever for Justin Herbert to start winning games because I think everything Brian Callahan said of him, I think that. And it looks like they're starting to win a little games this year with Jim Harbaugh as the coach. But Harbaugh's not really a first-year coach. TD with us for the TD Power Hour. TD, what's your evaluation of Brian Callahan so far?
Wow. There's good and there's bad. I think the scheming, play design is pretty good. And I find myself multiple times watching film saying, hey, if only they went here, look at that guy, he's wide open. I find myself doing that a lot. But I also find myself in going back and watching the game like, hey, they got to get this play call in sooner. They got to get to the line of scrimmage, with more time on the play clock to be able to look at everything and diagnose and make any necessary checks. That's my big area, some of the operational things. But I think overall, it's obviously not been good enough. I'm not going to say that, but I think overall there's promise. There are some things that I think could be built upon, but there's a lot of improvement that has happened too.
I kind of find myself in this like weird dichotomy where I do not think that it's Brian Callahan's fault that this team is 2-6. But then the question is, do I have the belief that Brian Callahan can get them out of it? Like that if, they do have another offseason and they get some better players and a better right tackle and a better quarterback and can Brian Callahan be the one that, he had a rough first year, but then after that, and I'm kind of torn on that. There's some things I really like. You brought up the play design. I mean, that touchdown to NWI, he was wide open in the end zone. He ran the route right. Rudolph put the ball on him. I mean, it was perfect. And there are some of these wow play calls that Arthur Smith used to dial up. The Lions game, that one drive where they threw the ball to Ridley and then they threw the ball to Wiley. And I'm like, wow. So there is some of that. But then at the same time, it's like, there's little things. You brought up getting the play calls in. I go back to training camp when, Will Levis threw that interception against the Seahawks. And it was like, I asked him, I said, so are you worried that, you're not going to have another competitive thing? No, it'll be fine. And they're kind of the same issues.
This is the thing. Just because he didn't act like it was a heart attack like you did doesn't mean he doesn't feel something has to be worked out. And this is something I find happening a lot where like you'll point something out and it's the right thing. Like it's definitely something that is absolutely correct. But your reaction to it and your I don't know how is that. I guess reaction is the best way your categorization of it is
My
heightened.
Freak out of it.
Your freak, there you go. Your freak out of it is heightened as opposed to where others are, and so it's interpreted that hey, you're against it, everyone else is for it. No, we all saw it, but it wasn't something where it's like okay, season's over now. You know what I mean? It was something. Okay,
right.
Look. This is something that you have to take and you learn from. And that's the key part. That's why you have the training camp opportunities. You make those mistakes. Now, when it starts to compound, then it's an issue. That's why the bad decisions that Levis had in back-to-back game. Oh, wait a minute. He didn't learn from the first one. He made the same mistake twice. Now it's getting to a third time. All right, what are we going to do about this? That's what you asked as a head coach. You say, look, man, what are we going to do about this? We need you to understand. You know what I mean? So that interception in training camp, it was what it was. But it was a learning opportunity. That's what they has to happen with that.
I think I was more disappointed that he didn't just stick him back out there on the field. You know, that it was the one play. They throw okay, all right, get back out there. We're doing it. And even if the Seahawks were like, no, we're going to run our number 2 defense, fine. But we got to get more. Like it's that kind of thing. And I feel like Callahan is, I think he's an incredibly nice guy. And I'm wondering if maybe he's too nice.
No, I don't think so. There's a respect. There's a respect level. That's why you got to go in the locker room and talk to these guys. Like there's a respect level. He's not too nice. There's a respect level that he has in that locker room. He's not too nice.
What'd you make of the tears after the game on Sunday?
Listen, I like it. I think that's a part of the transparency that he showcased since he got here, and it made it clear that this is not a team that's trying to tank. And it made it clear that your coach, Titans fans, is he wants to win, and I think it was genuine and it was good. I'm not gonna like overdo it either way, but it was good in the moment.
I didn't have a problem with it, but I knew other people would.
Of course.
I mean, I look at it like, hey, like even though Brian Callahan might be safe. Brian Callahan, you never really know, especially with this owner. You know, there's really no knowing what is what, but it's like these coaches, they know that if they don't win over the long haul, they're going to get fired. And so when they win a game, I do think it's like, hey, I've had to get up here after every game for the last 2 months and sit here and tell you guys, you know, oh yeah, we screwed this up and we said that, and to now be somewhere where we don't have to do that. I understood that, but a lot of people thought it was kind of like a sign that Callahan wasn't the guy to be the coach, and I'm not convinced of that.
It was a sign that Callahan wasn't what?
Like that he's not the guy to be the coach, to lead them out of it. And I'm like, I think for some reason I feel like that was a little too much.
It just is very interesting to me the way a lot of these takes or whatever you want to call them come from far away. You know what I mean? Come from someone who's not there seeing the team, or see someone like you who you may not be in there in the building, but you still see the team. You follow me?
Sure.
So it's just interesting to me that you know that's how that goes. It's way too early to say yes or no. You know, it is way too early. I just think one thing that he gets credit for from me is being himself, right? He's been transparent. He's been genuine since he got here. I think what you saw at that press conference was him. And as a head coach, especially around a bunch of guys getting paid and a bunch of professionals, you have to be who you are. And it's one of those things where you are who you are, and it's either take it or leave it. And if you go in there and you be fake, that's going to be spotted out, identified, and you really are going to have an issue on your hands.
By the way, I do have one thought on this that I want to pick up on the other side with TD. And of course, we'll hit your phones at the end of the hour, 615-737-1025. And then I have one big bone of contention that I've got. It just is driving me crazy. We'll do it next with TD. For the TD Power Hour, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. TD Power Hour, Teron Davenport with us for the next 30 minutes here on the program. TD, I have a good thing that I think I'm noticing that you would have more insight on and better expertise. And then I have a bad thing that's driving me crazy. Which one do you want to hit on first?
Let's go to bad thing.
Really? I figured we'd start with the bad thing it is. TD, I haven't watched 1 second of Charger football this year. Not 1 second. But Elijah Molden has 3 interceptions. And Tier Tart got a game ball on Sunday for blocking a kick. And somebody said that Christian Fulton's playing the best football of his career this year with the LA Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Add that to Malik Willis and what he's done with the Green Bay Packers, and I've got to give a salute to Malik because he has definitely done everything asked of him in Green Bay. Derrick Henry might run for 2,000 yards. DeAndre on Monday Night Football with 2 touchdowns and had the biggest impact of maybe any player other than Mahomes in the game. So whether it's the best player or the bottom of the roster guys, they're leaving the Titans and they're playing better. And it's not just a Brian Callahan coaching because some of these guys, like Christian Fulton, played for Mike Vrabel. TD, what is going on with these guys? 3 interceptions for Molden, and he's making an impact. What's going on with these guys when they leave the Titans and play better?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is searching for one answer to something that has an abundance of answers to it. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what it is. I mean, you can add Caleb Farley, right? He's out there with the Panthers, and he's making a comeback in his home state, Carolina. You know, there isn't one.
Is he on the active roster there?
No, but he did get. I believe he played this past week. I think it was, but
good for him.
Yeah, but I mean, look, like I don't know what it is. Tier Tart, you know, he blocked. He had a solid career when he was here. It was just issues, you know, with he and Mike Vrabel, right? So, I mean, there's different things. Christian Fulton, he didn't play well consistently, but there were stretches when he showed that he could play well, but then he would get hurt. Guess what happened out there with the Chargers? He's on the injury report with a hamstring. So even though he's playing well, you still have that, right? And that's not any slight on Fulton, because I think I've always thought Christian Fulton was a solid player, you know? So it's just Elijah Molden. You know, Molden's not a starter out there, right? You know that, right?
How's he got 3 interceptions?
I mean, he's in the rotation. He's playing in a lot of the sub packages, you know, and they bring him in and they bump Derwin James down to the nickel, especially when you're going against teams with a good tight end, and they just let Derwin James lock down the tight end, and Molden is at safety. So, I mean, yeah, on the surface, like if you want to like make this look like, okay, everybody that leaves, they do this and that. Yeah, you can make it look that way, but each individual situation has its own circumstance.
See, I agree because almost none of these guys, there's no similarities for a lot of them. Like, what does Malik have in common with DeAndre Hopkins? Or what does Molden have in common with Derrick Henry? I agree.
And we can't act like Henry and Hopkins didn't, you know, especially Henry. He was productive here. But the fact of the matter, he's behind a better offensive line, right? You know, you look at DeAndre Hopkins, he's
got Mahomes throwing him the ball.
He's motivated out there. I guess that's the best way I could put it, right? Like, yeah, you got Mahomes there. Like, he
looks refreshed. He looks refreshed out there. Yeah,
exactly.
He does. There is like a sense with DeAndre Hopkins, like he got to get out of jail free card.
Right.
What about Malik?
He's continuing to develop. And I mean, look, he showed signs. You know, everybody saw improvement from Malik Willis. You look at the Saints game, the preseason game, like he played well. He showed signs of improvement, but he's just continued to improve. And I will say this, there is something that has to be said about when a coach shows confidence in you. 3rd and 18, they don't run the draw play to say, hey, you know what, we're going to just get in better position to punt. 3rd and 18, they say, you know what, Malik, I trust you to make the right read and go to the right place with the football on 3rd and 18 and get us the first down. Christian Watson, I need you to run, as Coach Mack would say, that transcontinental crossing route, right, that deep cross, and we're going to hit you, and we're going to get this first down. And guess what? 47 yards later, they're in position to score.
I'm starting to think with Malik too, because I watched some of his press conference clips that have ended up on Twitter. And, there was the one before they played the Titans where he said, oh, I've got nothing but love for them over there. They paid me the whole time I was there. And, they believed in me and Miss Amy and everybody, whatever. And then he was asked after the Jaguars game, he was asked about kind of what he's doing to show the league his development. And he was like, oh, I'm not worried. We're focused on winning here. We're not focused on what it would say to the league or other teams or whatever. And I feel like I see that kind of growth in Malik off the field as well as the growth on the field.
Yeah,
his
absolutely.
body, like compared to what he looked like when he first got here, his body's totally different. It's almost like the Titans were the minor league system for Malik Willis, and now he's ready for the majors, and he's on another team.
I'm not necessarily going to say that because there's plenty of players that developed elsewhere and came and what it's like. I think that's being extreme. Like I'm not going to say, oh, they're the minor league. He came and he developed with the Titans. He ended up in a good situation with Green Bay, and that's what it is. Like I think that's really what it boils down to.
Okay, the good thing I think I'm seeing, and I wasn't there, you were, TD, I see Jeffrey Simmons growing up a little bit. Like the press conference, I watched his press conference yesterday or his media availability, and it wasn't big talk. It wasn't, but it was just kind of explaining, reserved, respectful, when he felt like the guys were too loud outside of him, saying something about. I kind of feel like we're seeing Jeffrey Simmons grow up as a leader this year, maybe differently than we would see somebody grow up as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
you
can
see
point to that. Yeah, he did his good old Coach Orgeron impression, right? Hey guys, I'm trying to do a press conference. That was good that he did that to quiet them down. I think you look at him explaining, some of the things that he explained as far as like the one-on-ones. Hey, I got to win the one-on-ones. If they choose to go against me one-on-one, I have to win it. And I think that's a good thing to make it clear, like they express that. So. I mean, yeah, there's been some progression. I think he faces the music after every loss, and he's facing it, in good times as well. So you got to give him credit for that.
By the way, in New England, they were going nuts about the fact that they kept singling up Simmons.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of a note for them where they were like, are these Patriot coaches? Because the Patriots are in a situation where even if Gerard Mayo, Gerard Mayo's not going to win with that team that we saw on Sunday, but they're all worked up saying, hey, look, it's one thing to not have good players. It's another thing to let Jeffrey Simmons just take over the game by singling him up the way that they singled him up.
I don't get it, right? But I will say this, and it's a part of, and I challenge you to do this more, go beyond the stats, right? I know T'Vondre Sweat is not putting up the numbers, right? Because I've seen a lot of time, like you'll put, hey, he's got zero pressures, he's got this, he's got that, QB hit, whatever. But you could impact the game without having a box score impact. And I think a part of Jeffrey Simmons getting the one-on-ones, they're sliding at times to T'Vondre Sweat. They're sliding, Harold Landry. Arden Key, he's not getting the attention he deserves, but he got 4 sacks in the last 3 games. You know what I mean? Like Arden Key has turned it up a bit. So you have that as well. So I think when you look, if this front can collectively continue to improve, you're going to see the turnovers improve. Because another example, right, of not impacting the stat sheet, but impacting the game, the personal stat sheet, you look at that interception Amani Hooker had, the first one.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Simmons was coming towards Drake May, and Drake May knew he had to rush the throw. And that's why the throw was off. And Hooker was able to swoop in and get the pick. So if they could continue to marry that pass rush and the coverage together the way that those turnovers you'll see an uptick there, but it remains to be seen. Like I don't trust 100% that's going to happen. You got to show me, you know what I mean? Because I haven't seen it consistently yet.
I do want to see it this week against the Chargers.
Yeah.
Because the Chargers, we know how much they've invested on the offensive line, much to my chagrin. But if they can pressure the Chargers the way they pressured the Patriots, then I think they'll be onto something. The Patriots, I'm worried may have the worst.
I don't know why it's much to your chagrin. I mean, it's not like J.C. Latham isn't a very good offensive lineman as well. So, yeah, I know Joe Alt would have been beautiful for you. And I was big on Joe Alt too, but I think J.C. Latham is fine as well.
J.C. Latham, I mean, I think I heard Robbie say this today, that he'll compare him to the guys that went after him, whether it's, Adunze and Bowers and those kind of players. I mean, again, if you take a guy who starts at left tackle for you for 10 years with the 7th overall pick, that is the value of that pick and what you're getting right now in J.C. Latham.
Yeah, and you see the leadership starting to emerge as well.
Even though Brock Bowers is leading the NFL in catches.
Brock Bowers is about to break Puka's record. You know that, right?
I mean,
he's on pace to break Puka Nakua's record. You believe that? Remember Michael Mayer and how everybody, we all were hype about him, right?
Yeah.
3 catches, 21 yards.
I mean, just imagine too if Brock Bowers
this
was
season
on a good team or with a good quarterback.
Boy.
Like a quarterback, and I'm not even saying like Brady, but like Herbert. If he had Herbert would just wear him out throwing the ball to him. And he's got Gardner Minshew, and he caught a 20-something yard touchdown pass from Desmond Ridder this past week. But again, you draft the tackle, and he's your starting left tackle for 10 years. You can live with that.
Absolutely.
It's 7 overall. All right, questions for TD. We'll hit them next. 615-737-1025. Get your questions in for TD here on the program. The TD Power Hour at Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game. TD Power Hour on the program. Teron Davenport with us. TD, do you have a thought or do you want to go to the people?
Just a quick thought. Derrick Henry needs 118.5 yards per game for these last 8 games. And he will be a 2,000-yard rusher. You believe that? And then one other thing for the RBs don't matter crowd, right? The top 3 rushers in the league right now were all free agents last year. They signed with a new team, right? Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. How about it?
I think what's happened is I think teams have realized why pay $25 million for a receiver when I get a running back for 10.
It's funny how the game always manages to autocorrect itself. And just to throw in one other thing, Jordan Mason is 4th. And this is a guy, what was he, undrafted, I think it was? Or late? Yeah, he's 4th. So, hey, you know what? Throw the top 3 thing that I said about RBs matter. Throw that out because you got Jordan Mason there too. So the game always finds a way to correct itself. That's what I love about it.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Skyler says TD to the Titans get fleeced by the Chiefs, not only on the DeAndre Hopkins trade, but on the L'Jarius Sneed trade.
No, I don't think they got fleeced at all. I mean, you look, L'Jarius Sneed at the time of the trade was a legit top 5 cornerback. And we know the amount of value that position has. So, no, I don't think they got fleeced. And this injury, it's a quad injury. Like, it's not related to the knee. He took a helmet to the quad. There were some things when they did the MRI that came out that a little bit deeper than they thought, and it's totally unrelated and unpredictable, right? So you have that. The DeAndre Hopkins trade. Listen, DeAndre Hopkins, we know his age. We know that he wasn't going to be there at the end of the year. So would you rather them, you know, trade him and get a 5th-round pick that could turn into a 4th or keep him? He's 32 years old. Wasn't doing well here, and also he wanted to go. So no, they didn't get fleeced on that either.
You don't think they could have waited a week or 2 extra to try to get the price?
So you wait a week or 2 extra, and what happens?
Maybe you get a 4th.
Maybe you don't, right? Maybe you wait a week or 2 extra, and Mike Williams. You know, the Chiefs say, hey, you know what? We'll get Mike Williams. Or the Chiefs say, hey, you know what? We'll get Deontay Johnson instead, right? Maybe they decide, hey, look, we want to go younger because we have, you know, other young guys we want to – maybe they do that and you don't trade them. Like, I don't get the why wait? You get a deal that makes sense. It could go to a 4th. Now, me personally, I probably would have tweak the conditions a little bit. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, man, you go to the Super Bowl, you get, I don't like that part of it. The 60%, I could see that, although he didn't play 60% of the snaps for the Titans this year yet. But I mean, he almost has to play that amount for the Chiefs with how their receiver position is.
I think this is just my opinion. I think Andy, the way they've deployed him is like they knew when we trade for him, hey, we're going to make him our number 1 receiver. I think they were like, hey, I think they lowballed the Titans, and the Titans were afraid of not getting anything, so they made the deal. And I think the Titans could have waited him out.
So what is proper value for a 32-year-old receiver that wasn't producing, that showed on the TV, right, wrong, or indifferent? At the Bills game, he was on the sideline, no helmet, and then on the sideline, helmet next to the coach. It showed. So what do you think they were supposed to get for that? A 3rd-round pick?
What if they got a 4th that could become a 3rd with the same conditions of the 5th that became the 4th?
Very unlikely. Very unlikely.
Texture says, TD, you mentioned the rest of the season is to evaluate Levis. Isn't Levis being hurt a red flag in the evaluation because he's had the questions of being injury prone, so it doesn't do any good for the future if he turns out to be good, but they cannot rely on him to stay healthy?
Here's the thing that's interesting about the injury and what I think could be a red flag with that. Obviously that it's, you know, he got injured, but the way he got injured, right? There was a read that was there. Throw the ball to Chick, let him catch it, and let him take the punishment. He didn't even have to scramble because the throw was there, right? So that's something I'd be like, here we go again. Like, we're still having those processing issues. But I don't think that it's that big. There's still, it's a red flag, but there's still, you got to go through these games and let it play out and see. Like, you don't just stop evaluating just because that situation happened.
Texture says, TD, what do you think of Chig? Do you think he's getting better, or do you think the Titans need to do better at tight end?
I think they need to do better at tight end. And I mean, when that's coming from me, because I'm probably as big of a Chig Okonkwo advocate as there is, right? They need to do better. Chig hasn't lived up to the promise that he showed as a rookie, and what he's shown at times in training camp, and it's something that they have to figure out. Now, I used him as an example of making a play, right? Earlier when we talked about the interception, but I will say, look, man, like Mason Rudolph has to not throw a lightning bolt on that, and he has to not keep it, high. Also, that's supposed to be top of the numbers to the face mask, but you still have to make a play for your quarterback, and that's an example of where I think Chig could do a better job and be a more impactful player.
Texture says, TD, Brian Baldinger recently praised Peter Skoronski in an interview and said the Titans made the right pick in that spot. Do you agree?
I like what they did there, and you got to remember this is a team that was placing a lot of emphasis on protecting the pocket from the interior. So when they do that, they're going to take a guy like Skoronski, where they did. But the question is, okay, what could you have gotten behind him? You could always play that hindsight 2020 game, and there are obviously some players that could have been picked behind him, but I think they did the right thing just as far as building towards the offensive line and making sure that was an area where they wanted to ensure that, they were strong. And I mean, look, like you look at this draft, just 3 picks later, the Steelers took a tackle also in Broderick Jones, or excuse me, a tackle as opposed to the guard, an offensive lineman also in Broderick Jones. So it wasn't like, there weren't early guys coming off the board.
I was actually watching Gonzalez for the for the Patriots last week.
He's a darn good corner.
And I was like, man, he's
good.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's good. I mean, and
just think, he didn't play half of last year.
No, didn't he get hurt real early?
Yeah, he got hurt. He is good. Now, I always liked the Illinois corner a little bit better, Devin Witherspoon, but yeah, Christian Gonzalez is good. He's a lockdown. You have him travel and, do what you do.
TD, great stuff as always. Appreciate your time. Again, talking with TD. You sat down with Ryan Stonehouse on Talking with TD and got a big preview for the Charger game this week.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Yep, TD with us as always. Hal joins us next. Again, I'm not doing this moral victory stuff for the Predators. They got a big one tonight against the defending Cup champions. Big one because they lost yesterday. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I like the game. I like the way they played, the way they competed. I really like the offensive zone, the way they cycled and fought for pucks and fought for the interior. That being said, you're right. You need 2 points. You need points right now, and they need to find ways to get those. And so it's frustrating, and I know it's frustrating to watch. I can't imagine how hard it is to play these games where you say, okay, we're doing something good here, we're just not getting rewarded.
How you guys were on the road when Barry came on the show on Tuesday. I'm sure you heard what he said on the program about the idea of, hey, if things don't start working out, there are going to be some changes and younger guys inserted into the lineup. What did you make of that? And did those comments make its way where I think they were probably intended to make their way to, which was the dressing room?
Yeah, that's an interesting interview because he said a lot of things, right? And a lot of that was hypothetical. And, if it continues, which we don't know. We don't know if it's going to continue. We hope that it's going to come around. But I think the message was sent with that interview where he's saying, and everyone knows this, if you don't win, things change. That's a winning business. And, if you're not going to be part of a winning team, then that team is going to change. And if you're not a reason why you should be winning, you're going to be moved on. And that's just the way it is. And I think that's the honesty from Trotzy. And I think the guys should take it as a message that, hey, we got to perform. We got to get the results.
Hal, when you played, walk me through this because, yes, there's a message being sent, and I do think that guys hear those kind of things. But at the same time, as a player, hey, my contract is for like UC Soros knows he's not getting traded because he knows what his contract status is. He knows that, the guy that was potentially going to replace him isn't here anymore. So he knows he's not losing his job. It would not come as a surprise to and I don't want to single anybody out, but just for this sake, let's use Lazan, who probably hasn't played up to what we saw him playing last year. It wouldn't come as a surprise to him that if this team doesn't win, that they may take him out of the lineup or they may trade him somewhere else or they may. Don't they already know that, Hal?
Yeah, I think if you think you're untouchable in this league, then you're sadly mistaken. If Wayne Gretzky can get traded, then anyone can get traded. I think that's something that as a competitor and a player in the league, you have to understand that you have to do your job. Whether you have the job security, that's great. But if you want to win and you're a competitor, you have to get the job done. And, certainly players that don't have long deals, they know they can be moved at any time. And I think that enters guys' minds, and it did when I was playing. But I think that's for being a professional, is knowing you got to do your job, whether it's going to be here or it's going to be somewhere else. You got to compete. You got to try to find ways to make your team successful.
Hal Gill with us on the program. Hal's with the Predators in Florida, where they take on the Panthers tonight at 6:00. What did you think of the first line last night, moving Stamkos up there with Forsberg and O'Reilly? Stamkos, nice little tip in, put the puck in the net. What did you make of that line switch up and kind of the lines offensively as a whole?
Yeah, it's interesting because Stamkos, I feel like they went out and played the game. That was probably Stammer's best game, 5-on-5. I thought he got obviously rewarded with a goal, but he did a lot of little things. I feel like in that first period, he worked through a few little things where he did make mistakes and kind of learned from them and said, okay, as the game went on, he got better and better. And so I think that's just comfort level of playing with those guys. But I think that you look up and down the line, that line that was thrown together with Parson and, he jumped out there. He competed and battled and playing with Tomasino. I thought Tomasino jumped off the page. He was buzzing. And so I think there's a lot of waves of energy that they brought in last game. And, we'll see what happens. Colton Sissons left the game. So there may be another lineup change with him, depending on if he can go or not. But I think they found the mix of energy. And I think that's more important than anything, is that sustained zone time, and that's what they were getting last night.
Hal Gill with us. Hal, to that point, you brought up that Parsonen line last night that was kind of just thrown together. Evangelista was supposed to get scratched. Barry Trotz has made it, I guess, kind of clear to me, just in the year and a half that he's been running the team, that's kind of his thing, that if Barry thinks you need a little message or you need a little refocusing, that he'll scratch you for a game, or I guess in this case, Andrew Burnett will scratch you for a game. And I remember last year how mad Barry got when Tyson Barry didn't like it. And he was like, I scratched Ovechkin. So if I can scratch Ovechkin, you can be scratched. Luke Evangelista was supposed to be a healthy scratch last night. Tommy Novak, last minute, ends up getting scratched with an upper body injury. I was listening to you and Max. You guys were surprised when the lineups came down before the game with the scratch of Novak. Does it almost accomplish the goal of what they're trying to do? Because I thought Evangelista played pretty well last night. Does it kind of does the message still get through even though Evangelista didn't actually sit last night?
Yeah, it's almost a perfect example of that message. The message was sent. He was supposed to be a scratch, and then, whoa! I got life. I got a chance, and it happened quick. And I don't have time to pout about sitting out and missing a game. I have to go and play it, and I know that I wasn't going to be in this game. So you got an extra breath of life, and I think he took advantage of it. And he played hard, and I thought those kids, the way they played with each other was probably the most inspiring moment of the season. I feel like they all said, hey, we can do something. We're on this line together. We're going to do it together, because it wasn't just one guy doing it. It was a battle and compete from all three of them. Got rewarded with a goal, and that gives them some life. And so hopefully they can continue that, because you need those young guys going.
Mm-hmm. What's up with Brady Shea? Last night he had a brutal turnover, that led to a breakaway that was a miraculous save by UC Saros last night. And I just see, turnovers, giveaways, and moments where I remember Brady Shea a couple years ago in that Carolina playoff series during the COVID divisions. And I mean, that to me was a bona fide first pair defenseman. And it just seems like he's chasing it too much. In my opinion, you've played. So what do you think?
Well, it's hard when you're a defenseman and you're struggling. You want to keep it simple. And I think that's great. But with the system, you need to play the system. You can't just simplify it the way you want to do it. He's coming from a man-to-man game in Carolina, and he's adjusting to a new system. But I think offensively, there's just a little hesitation in his game. And I think he needs to get past that, get comfortable in what he's supposed to be doing, and then just make the play instead of overthinking it. And that little bit of hesitation or that little bit of move is costing him right now. So I think he's getting better, though. I think he's getting the system and getting comfortable with it. And once he's truly comfortable and confident in where the play is going and where he needs to take it, I think it's going to happen quicker, and I think you're going to get better results.
Hal, I think I remember a couple years ago when the Predators made the in-season coaching change from Laviolette to John Hines, and you told us the story of when you played in Pittsburgh, and there was an in-season coaching change, and you guys ended up winning the Cup. Not to say that this team is going to change the coach or that this team is going to win the Cup, but clearly that team had the talent to win it all, very successful. And clearly early in the year, you guys weren't getting it going. I ask that because in response to what we're seeing right now, I do kind of feel like the Predators will be fine, but I'm a little worried that they're digging themselves too much of a hole. Have you been part of something where there was a hole that was dug and you had to spend the whole year digging yourself out of it? And if so, how difficult is that to do when you dig a hole this early in the season?
Yeah, there's different circumstances. I think Bruno is in this fight with the guys, and the guys respect Bruno. And every time I've talked to any of the guys, they love what Bruno's doing. They just want to be better together. And I think I played for coaches that lost the room, and you need to make a coaching change. And that's not even close to the situation right now. I think they're having a team-wide, coaches involved, struggle to get to where they want to get to. And I've been on teams where you've been worn down and beat down, and a fresh breath of air can change everything. But I don't think this is it. I think this is just them working through a system. I think the coaching staff and the players are doing it together. So I'm okay with what's happening right now. And I think they're going to be better in the long run for it, because they're sticking to it. They're not just backing away from the challenge. They're fighting it together.
See, I think you missed the gist of my question because I think you're like, Jared Stillman talking about the coach. And so let me say that wasn't actually what I meant, though, but I do agree with you. And I'll say this. I don't think Barry Trotz is going to, like, hockey's a sport where they fire the coach pretty quickly. If you're a coach, I think you're going to get double or triple the time that a normal general manager would give you with Barry Trotz as the general manager. I mean, David Poyle was the same way, too, as far as how much time they would give the coach. But the question I guess I was asking was, have you been on a team where you had the talent to be good, but you just started off slow and it ended up being something that the whole season you had to work yourself out of, but it was fine come March and April?
Yeah, well, I was on the team in Toronto, and we had a great team. And if we did so many things, and we were built for the playoffs. We had a big team, strong team, ready to go. Matt Sundin leading the team, and we just lost like a couple too many games and bad spots, and it cost us. And we missed the playoffs by a shootout goal and missed it by a point. But I think that was a team that, if we made the playoffs, we would have done some damage. It just didn't click in time for us, and so I think I look at this team. I still think this team can do a lot of damage in the playoffs. They just got to get to this point where they can play that system to be effective in the playoffs. There's no sense in changing your system and trying to grind out wins by building a fort around Saros. I think you got to go play your game the right way, because that's how you're going to win in the playoffs.
Yeah. Hal Gill with us on the program. Hal, last one for you. How much do you feel like this team needs a big win tonight just to get rewarded for the way that they played the other night?
Yeah, that'll be nice. If I think they deserved points last night, and that's frustrating. So I think they need to look at it as, okay, we have to be the way we were last night and a little bit better. Like, you get better every day, and I think that's the challenge. But you have to be objective and look at what your body of work is. Did you play the right way? Did you do the right things? I think eventually you're going to get the points, but you can't go into a game saying, we need to get a win here. You need to go into a game saying, we got to play the right way, do all the right things, take care of the process, and then hopefully the process takes care of you and you get the 2 points.
Hal, we've been talking about needing a road trip. Trotz has come on the show, said they need a road trip. Heard you and Max talking about it. They need a road trip. They looked focused last night, didn't get the result they wanted to. We shall see tonight if they can pick up that point, come back home Saturday, and then the long road trip that I think may be the road trip that we end up talking about changing their season. Hal, great stuff as always. Appreciate it. Have a great call tonight.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
It's hockey night in Smashville.
Walk over to Yossi. His one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, now on Stillman and Company.
Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. That's tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with my guy, TJ Anderson. That's right, at tjanderson.com. The Predators tonight taking on the Florida Panthers. The Predators dropped a tough one last night. Again, probably one of their better games, and they still lost. The problem is the Predators are 4-8-1. That is bad for 9 points. I would say that's good. You know, we would say, oh, that's good for 23, but that's bad. 9 points, that is the last in the league. Now, it's tied with a couple other teams, but that's not really much to write home about. Meanwhile, the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions, are 9-3-1. That's good for 19 points. And the Panthers, through 14 games, are 3-1-1 at home. The Predators are 1-2-1 on the road. That obviously not very good as far as they are concerned. Again, the Predators fell last night by a tough score of 3-2 at Washington. They got goals from Juuso Parssinen and Steven Stamkos, and the Stamkos goal did come at 5-on-5, which Stamkos' play at 5-on-5 had been somewhat of a concern. Here's head coach Andrew Burnett.
Yeah, I thought that was probably his best game. You know, I really thought he was on the puck and he had the puck, and he just seemed in sync a little bit. So that's really good to see. I thought the kid line was really good. So those are positives for us to take out of here.
We expect that we'll know more about the injury situation for the Predators. Colton Sissons went down yesterday as far as in the middle of the game. And then Tommy Novak, a surprise scratch. Tommy Novak day-to-day with an upper body injury. He was supposed to go last night. And then I was listening to Max and Hal, and apparently he took the ice for warm-ups. But then right at time of puck drop, he was relieved, and Luke Evangelista was put in the lineup. And that line with the Tomasino, Parson, and Evangelista wasn't that bad. As far as we were hoping to see Novak there, or they were expecting to see Novak there, was not bad yesterday, so we'll keep an eye on that. Predators and Panthers tonight, 6 o'clock. Again, early start time, and of course, you can hear the game right here on 102.5 and 106.3. The game of the Predators have lost 2 in a row, and now, instead of taking a look at the standings, which is something that we used to do quite often, I'm taking a look now at the playoff odds. Because the Predators come into today, and we're approaching U.S. Thanksgiving, and you know how much I care about. The Predators still have a playoff odd, according to MoneyPuck.com, of 32.1%. But they're going to have to start winning games. They're going to have to dig themselves out. I mean, they're already 5 games behind the team they're playing tonight. Florida's got 19 points. You've got 9. So it is time for the Predators to win. And this is my final thought, presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ. And my final thought is this. I liked the effort last night, hated the result, which is what Peter Laviolette used to say all the time when he liked how they played, but they didn't win. You can't have much more of that. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd rather hate the effort and be pleased with the result than liking where their game is at and them losing. Because I did like the game I saw last night, but they still lost. That's it for us. Coming up next, Robbie Stanley has the pregame show, and then puck drop at 6 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game with Max and Hal. We will see you tomorrow at 2.